Hey everybody, and welcome to EntrepreNINES.
Who are you?
I'm John Wist.
And I'm Bonni.
Just, trying to throw you off. Bonni.
Yeah. Anyway.
I have the easy part.
This is a podcast because we're two Enneagram 9s who took the big leap into entrepreneurship at a similar time. In this space, we are inviting you to laugh and learn with us as we build businesses with soul. This is episode 43.
Hey, by the way, I didn't mention this before, but I'm going to mention it in this episode. Good job on memorizing.
I'm trying so hard.
You're doing so good.
You would think 43 episodes in, I would be much further down the road.
You're doing so good. I was very impressed. I didn't say it last time because we were just, we
were more on point.
Yeah, I was trying to let it, I already screwed up.
It's true.
So, I might as well
John,
just celebrate
this time
your win.
it feels like a prank. Welcome to EntrepreNINES.
I know. Welcome to EntrepreNINES.
And then he just looked at me. For those of you who weren't watching on YouTube, he just looked at me and I was like, you're doing it wrong.
I literally have one line in my name and you've got this paragraph and I screwed it up. So, oh gosh, that's funny.
We're professionals.
Yeah, we're professionals. So we are today doing a little debrief of our first interview this new season of our friends Garrett and Garrett, the 2's.
The 2's.
So what we want to do and create a new rhythm on with the podcast is every time that we have somebody on, and we talked about this before, but to do an episode before that's a deep dive into their specific Enneagram number, then have the interview, and then do an episode after that's a little bit of our debrief, response, reflection on kind of what we learned, just learning about our friends, our new friends. So
there are always things we can take away from other people. Yeah.
And so, we do a lot. I would say, in the moment, of course, like when you're having a conversation, it's normal to respond to someone and reflect on what they're saying to you, right? So we've done some of that already within the interview itself. So you feel free to go back and watch. But this is just a time for us to really just highlight some things that we were hit by.
Yeah, because we also don't want to take up all the airtime in an interview with what we think. That's kind of a jerk way to do an interview.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Actually, I'm going to talk half the time.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell you everything you just told me.
Yeah.
Or everything I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're also 9, so we'd never do that.
Yeah, never. Interrupting is the worst.
It's the worst. Okay, so Bonni, just give me a little bit of your takeaways from our times talking with our 2's.
Yeah, the first thing that hit me that I was like, oh, this is so funny, is when they were talking about niching down. Yeah. And how they ended up niching down. Which was like so. What they niched down to, if you didn't listen, was basically they are elevating and serving these thankless blue collar industries is where they're kind of headed. Yep. And so they just were filming like this construction of an overpass and taking photographs there. And it immediately stood out to me that this is very type 2 of them. Yeah. So type 2 of them to pick this industry that nobody stops these people who do this job to say, thank you for making a road for me to drive my car on that doesn't also give me a neck injury, when I'm driving down it, right? Yeah. And I pointed that out in the episode, but I was thinking of it just for you and I in our journeys of niching down in the last 2 years or so, and how we, both of us, because we were working in ministry, which is a draw, I think, as a type 9, because ministry offers this promise of healing and wholeness and bigger purpose and, unity even. And so we were drawn to this. And
mattering.
And matter,
right? Like having your voice matter, right?
Purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of got out of that and we both were hurt in the process. And so we turned tail and ran the opposite direction.
How far can we go?
I'm not doing that again. That hurt bad. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And then we've both kind of circled back around to that. Because I'll say, even, when I think back to when you and I first were getting started, I did want to work with churches and faith-based nonprofits and help them there. But then I was like, ow, those people are mean sometimes. And so then I stopped and I broadened and I was like, it's going to be people in their first 3 years. It's going to be these kind of people. It's going to be these kind of people. And now where am I? Like literally back in this faith space.
Yeah.
And this idea of like, hey, whole people make healthy communities. And if you're going to try to heal people, you better be healing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just going to work out of a place of wounding and hurt people instead of help them.
Okay, so 2 things. This is going to feel like it's out of left field for the first one. Number 1.
Yikes.
Whole people make healthy communities. Like,
yeah, I'm leaning into that, John.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard you say that.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Do you want to hear the second half?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Healthy communities change the world.
Oh.
Boom! There's the 9.
Snap.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel good about it.
Also, I feel like I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job here, but I feel like that needs to be a podcast. Like whole people make healthy communities. Like
all by itself.
Yeah, like that could be a whole nother podcast. No, I know, but it could be a whole nother podcast. Anyways, that's besides the point. No, what I was going to say is like, I do think it's really interesting to see like, as I think they brought us to the point of reflecting on where we've been.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so it was interesting, even as you were saying that, to think like where you were when you left ministry world, in the context of ministry, like where you were at in that moment was very much
it's exactly right here, John,
where you are right now. Right. Like, and it's not that you didn't go anywhere in the in-between.
Yeah.
You actually went a different direction, again, because of like the hurt and because of all the different crazy things and emotions that happened within that whole time process of transition. But you are really back in a place where it's like, oh, this is the Bonni that was like super fired up.
Right.
Like 4 years ago.
This is the Bonni that confidently walked away because she knew it wasn't happening here.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. And that you needed a place to exercise, you know, those thoughts and those feelings that you were having. And really not just that, but like the revelations, the plans that were coming into your brain at that point are now like, that's now. Right.
Yeah. They're just mine now.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, I would say like, my brain was in a different place when I left as far as like what I think probably where I thought I would be most useful or make the most impact. Like I saw, you know, live streaming and things like that as more of kind of my outlet.
It was also the pandemic. So
it was also huge. The pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was, it made sense with like kind of that moment in time.
Right.
But I think now, you know, I don't know. Like I feel like for me, it's entering into this space more, like podcasting and just the doors that are starting to open in this space, which is a more long-term medium. You know, it's a medium that's going to have some more legs outside of what happens right now as we're recording, right? Like this is just step 1.
It has an echo.
Yeah. So I think that is,
but not like bad audio, like an impact. That's what I mean.
Correct.
Yeah.
And but doing it through also with that in mind, the type of clientele though coming back around to nonprofit.
Yeah. And I was gonna say like another thing I see how you're kind of circling back is when we started working together and you came into ministry, like it was storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and like John was chief storyteller and I was constantly like, you guys want to tell stories and John wants to tell stories and he's good at it. Like, let's bring him on.
Yeah.
And then your role morphed away from that quickly.
Sure, yeah.
And so, but then there was always this, I mean, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this is just what I see in your story. There was always this draw towards storytelling and telling important stories, telling them well and telling them in a way that draws people together.
Yeah, and I think
here you are.
Yeah, and I think I have to, and I've only actually started to explore this. Just I haven't told anybody about this yet. Like I've only, well, it's not like it's just more of a personal revelation.
Yeah.
Like I've started to explore a little bit more just in my thinking as I'm going about like doing what I'm doing. Like it was a personal reason that I started thinking about this, and that is like I'm a trained skeptic. Like I went to school to ask questions and to be skeptical of what people were telling me and to try to get to the truth and to the real story of things. And so it was a personal situation that actually was like, oh, dang, like I caught myself of like, oh, shoot.
I'll be a journalist.
The reason why you're thinking this way right now is because you kind of got trained to do that. Right. And so using that now as like a little bit of like ammunition of saying, okay, hold on. I actually like part of the reason why I think I enjoy story, I'm drawn to story, feel like I can tell story is because I can ask a question.
Yeah.
And so putting myself back in a place of saying like the reason why I like editing, the reason why I like actually not being behind the camera a whole lot, but being like to the side of the camera or like having a conversation with someone is because I like the question.
Yeah.
Or I feel trained. I feel confident in the fact that I can ask the question that will lead to a certain place.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting, like recent revelation. I
You're
think.
good at pulling out the story underneath the story. And that's something that we got to see like in our time in ministry together. And I'm sure we'll continue to manifest. And you do it in a way that's not like, I think there are some journalists that probably do this in a very like gotcha way.
Sure.
That feels invasive and probably like a bit exploitive to the person interviewing, but you do it in a very like true and helpful way that helps people feel like, oh, I didn't even know I had the words to say it that. I mean, I just from thinking back to interviews we used to do and how that would come about in the room, and people would walk out and be like, I didn't even know I had words, but like the way that you phrase that, John, or you know, like the way that you kind of asked me to keep going on that thread. Like,
yeah. We're not done there.
And it would help them come around to like a really meaningful. Hard for editing when that happens. Yeah. Because then you want all of it, but you also do a good job of, you know, helping people have that experience when they watch too.
Right. And I think that's the part where I've always felt strongest is in finding the story thread within a completed interview already, you know, and I think I have to remind myself that like I'm also able to do that on the front end. Yeah. And so, so anyways, and that's kind of the joy of doing an interview again. Yeah. You know, is like getting into that moment of being like, oh, like this is a really good segue into this next thing. Like, let's go there.
Yes. So. We all secretly benefit from John's expert interviewing skills because that's how this podcast works. I think you carry the storyline well for both of us. Sure. And then when we have guests, that's why I'm more quiet. Yeah. Because John needs, I mean, that's your gift. It's less my gift. Okay. So.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll receive.
Yay! Great job. Excuse me. It's time to pick up the babies. Oh, yeah.
Sorry
for that noise.
We'll finish up quick. Okay, so...
No, Mark's picking up the babies. We're fine.
That's right, yeah. Did you have anything else? Sorry, I kind of took us off on a little tangent.
I mean, I think that was the biggest thing that stood out to me is just like, if you're an Enneagram entrepreneur and you know your type and you understand your motivations... Yeah. Probably your market, like your audience is there. Yeah. And so just leaning into like, man, what is it that I care about? Like what excites me? It's probably going to be your core motivations. There's probably something there. Yeah. Like maybe I need to do some scientific research. I'm not a scientist. That will never happen. But
a poll or something.
Yeah. Like, hey, what's your Enneagram number? Who's your niche?
Yeah.
Let's find out. So
yeah. That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah. I think, and kind of jumping out from there, like I think that the thing that I'm walking away with is that, you know, part of the fun, because they asked me a couple times, they're like, hey, because they're podcasters. Yeah. So they're like, hey, you sure you don't want to interview us separately so you like get some more legs out of this? Like you get us. I loved them together. And I was like, no, you know, like I think we really want to like see you guys do this together, and we want to get your, and I'm glad we did it that way, because I think for me, what that highlighted, and I was telling Bonni, like I tried to mention this out loud a couple times during the interview too, was like you're both 2's because you have the same motivation, but you have different thoughts and approaches on how to get there. Right. And I think that, and you can talk about this, I think, better than I can, but like I think something that I've heard from people at times about the Enneagram or even experiences we've had with the Enneagram is that, you know, it can get to this point where it's maybe elevated or put on a platform that is unhealthy is one thing. And number two, can be used as a weapon to label people, put them in boxes, all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, what this reminded me of is that like the Enneagram is a tool, right? And we're all still human. And the Enneagram allows for space for you to live outside of your number, and your core motivation in certain ways. And that's reflected in the way that you approach things or the way that you think differently than somebody else but with the reminder that you have this core motivation and that it could be the same as somebody who's standing right next to you or sitting right next to you. They just have a different view of how to get there. And so I think that was a really good reminder of a visual audio reminder of like two people who sit in the same room a lot. They are working together all the time. They own a business together, who have the same motivation for this heart for service, but clearly have different thoughts on how to achieve it. Right. And that is good. Like, I think Garrett was saying, like, you know, it makes some kind of like a juggernaut in his mind.
I love him continuing to use that word.
Yeah.
It was make me laugh.
Yeah. Like it's like he sees it as a juggernaut, you know, and like at times. And then also like there's these times of tension because they aren't seeing everything exactly eye to eye. So,
yeah. No, it's true. I love, and that was my big thing when I was like, they're coming together, right? Like we want them together. Two doing a business together. I mean, that's fascinating for me because that is a lot of what I teach. Like with Enneagram, when people start to learn it, and I have like an Instagram post I'll try to link about how you can either put yourself into the box and shrink down, or how you can allow the Enneagram to be a tool that actually steps you out of the personality box you've already been unknowingly living in. And people do tend to, here's what I'll say. It's kind of like when you first learn about the Enneagram, you are like, I am in this box. This is my box.
And you like love your box. Great. It's like a beautiful box.
Yes. Then suddenly like you're not crazy. Like you thought there was a box here. And there is. And I love it. I'm like a cat in an empty box. It's so cozy.
In the sun.
Yeah. In the sun. It's great. And then you're like, and I know about your box. And I know about your box. And let's talk about your box. I'm not sure what your box is, but as soon as you tell me, I'll know. And we'll all be in this like little box together.
Yeah.
Our own boxes not connecting. And I'll be like, let's sew your box, you know?
Right.
And then with time and awareness, and when you start practicing some of these and like applying the tool to step outside of your box, is when you suddenly stop putting other people in their boxes too. And so, and giving them space to kind of express their personality the way that they need to. You know, because not only is it wings, like we really honed in on wings in their conversation.
For sure.
And we kind of hit on like how they grew up in the industries they were in. Yes, for sure. And then there's subtypes. And then there's how much they pull from their decision-making triad and what level of stress they're experiencing at any given moment. And there's subtypes are a whole new, you know, like can of worms for flavoring your Enneagram personality. And how much somebody feels like there are times that 2's are going to walk into a room and one of them's going to be like, well, now we have to fight. And the other one's going to be like, this isn't a fight. Why would we fight? So then they're going to approach the conversation, one of them from the conflict coping and one of them from like just the regular interpersonal stance. And they're going to right over each other. And that's just part of being a person and having a different perspective, even though like your motivations are the same. So that is something, you know, and we were kind of talking after about just John and I's first experience with Enneagram. And how we approached it the wrong way for a long time and kind of like saw people in their box and then like closed the lid on them and taped it shut.
Like you have to
like,
stay in your box.
Yeah.
Like, why are you getting out of your box?
Stop it. That's
like,
not
why are you
how
coming to my box?
Yeah, get out of here. Yeah. So healthier way. And I think what people tend to grow into is as you start applying and growing, then you start stepping outside of your box. You can see people outside of their boxes too. So
well, and I love too, like how, you know, Garrett was talking about how like this has helped him to see like some of those dark spots, so those shadow side areas, and say like, oh, like that's why I do this, you know. And I think that is it's really healthy, and I think it's one of the maybe bigger advantages of just trying to learn more about yourself, like whether it's the Enneagram or something else, like
whatever works for you. Like learning about yourself only enhances like who you are and your ability to, I think, navigate the shadow side, because I think that he was talking about it. Like he's an eternal optimist, right? Like he wants to see everything with rose colored glasses. And the reality is like, there's just so much of the other side. Like, and that's, you know, again, it could come from anywhere, like it background, how you grew up, you know, just a situational thing right now. Like it could be any of those things that are
are bringing out the negative. But if you can understand why you feel the way you feel in that negativity, like I feel like that is just it just opens up just ways to be able to cope with yourself. Yeah. And then like cope with other people's handling of you when you're in those spaces, you know?
And I'll say like the defining feature that helps you move forward versus like kind of nestle into your box is like understand why you do this the way that you do and say, but it doesn't have to stay that way. I'm not stuck.
Right.
Because there is this kind of secondary path that people do is like, if you're ready to stay in your box and keep people in your box, you're gonna be like, well, this is just what I do. And so use it kind of as a shield too, to say, this is my tendency. I'm just a 9. I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna want to be I'm never gonna start a conflict. I'm a 9.
Right.
Like, no, you're capable of having a conflict and then actually navigating it really well.
Right.
If you allow yourself to step into it. So I think that's the other part of like and it's cool to hear him even talk about, understand why that is happening. Yeah. And he didn't feel trapped in it.
Right.
Right. Like he could see a way forward that was different.
Yeah. And I think that I think has been the cool part about learning about 9s for us. Well, for me, and it is like understanding limitations, right? But also not feeling trapped within a certain definition of who I am or who I could be, right? Like there are limitations to who I am.
Right.
I'm a human.
Right.
Right.
Like the sooner you embrace that, the further you'll go.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
But also understanding that just because there's some limitations that are perceived doesn't mean that they're real. Yeah. And that, there are things that are real and they are solid and there's not much getting around them and that's okay. But there's things that I've told myself or convinced myself that are not real and that are not solid. Yeah. And they can be moved and I can go around them or I can go through them or over whatever you want to, whatever analogy you want to use. Like they are not defining to who I am and I can navigate around those and they may not line up with the same things that you are perceived hurdles or real hurdles for you, right? Just because we're 9s. So I think that is that was cool. Some of the evolution maybe even of what I saw as we were talking that I saw in them. So that was cool.
I did appreciate that too. I just love when we show up in our own ways. Yeah. And then it allows other people to see themselves in that too. So two 2's.
2's.
Doing a service industry for a service industry.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Service on service on service. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah. Well, our plan is to do more of these. Yes. Because they're fun. So we will be working towards our next interview. We don't know a number yet.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But we'll let you know when we do. So in the meantime, please go back and listen if you haven't already to their episode. It was awesome. And down in the show notes, we'll have links to that as well as a bunch of other things. Yeah. And we'd love for you to subscribe and help other people find us. Don't forget we're on YouTube now.
YouTube.
So that's fun. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Bye.